quickly look at political socialization and public opinion. Political culture is the way that people feel what the government should do and what its proper role in society should be. The way you acquire your political culture is political socialization. It's the way people acquire their political values. Some of you may call it conservative, liberal, middle of the road, whatever. The most important influence on your political socialization is family members, what are called dinner table politics. Sitting around, listening to your parents, listening to your siblings and your parents, discussing their political viewpoints. Of course, school and peers is very important. Media, especially television today and the internet. Religion, as we'll go through in a little bit, a slide showing how important religion is. Demographics, your race, ethnicity, gender, age, and region all have an effect on your political socialization. In the past few years, you can look at side events like 9/11 as directly affecting people's values on what they think politics should be. Public opinion polls is how we determine how people feel and what ends of the spectrum they would consider themselves to be. Literary Digest was important during the 1920s as more and more media got involved in making straw polls and in simply picking people out and asking their opinion. Literary Digest was the #1 poll making organization till 1936 when they misread the 1936 election with Franklin Roosevelt. George Gallup made a correct prediction, and ever since then, George Gallup and the Gallup poll has been the largest influence on poll making in the United States. How do you determine the content and phrasing questions in these opinion polls? You have to select a sample. No one's going to go out and sample everybody. You have to have a scientific sample. That can be random, where everybody has an equal chance of being part of the poll, or stratified sampling, where you go out and you look at different groups, how those different groups may be stratified and diverse, and then take a small sample of those. You contact those respondents. Random digit dialing is the most popular today with technology. The way it works is you have those using computers and an auto dial system targeting those individuals as volunteers. They make calls automatically. They get live answers, or they get busy signals or voicemail. In the case of voicemail, you've all probably heard pre-recorded messages played. You get a recorded statement. If you get somebody at the other end that's willing to press 1 to speak to a volunteer, that's about 15% of random digit dialing. But when you get 15%, that becomes important to those that are paying for the poll. Types of political polls: push polls are used to influence opinion. Tracking polls are taken on a daily basis. Exit polls are what you have at the polling place, at least 100 yards away from the polling place, simply asking, who did you vote for? Here's an example of a push poll where you're trying to influence opinion. Notice the first question, straightforward. You favor or oppose an increased federal tax on gasoline? But notice the next question is an example of a push poll. We're going to influence opinion. But what if the increased tax on gasoline would reduce the United States' dependence on foreign oil? Then would you favor or oppose an increased federal tax on gasoline? Notice how they're trying to influence the respondent and influence their opinion and their political socialization through a question. Daily tracking polls are taken every day. Look at the Gallup daily tracking poll between John McCain and Barack Obama in the 2008 election. They could see that by October there was a wide gap in those who would favor either candidate, and they could make a prediction on who was going to win. Shortcomings of polling is, of course, you have to consider a margin of error. You always notice that there's a 3-4% margin of error. They may make errors in selecting the sample, as Literary Digest did back in 1936. Polls limit the respondents' options. They don't, unless they get a yes or no, they may not be able to give a maybe answer or give a qualified answer. They might not have enough information to answer, which is pretty true in Americans' case. And measures of intensity may be imprecise. Political socialization influences public opinion, your personal benefits. How important is an election or an issue to you? Political knowledge or lack thereof is a big problem in the United States. Cues from leaders who may be charismatic and your political ideology that you've grown up with. The effects of public opinion may influence the course of public policy. Some critics argue this weakens democracy when we're so involved in polls. And of course, the bandwagon underdog effect. Everybody wants to get on the bandwagon. People like to go for the underdog. Two last slides. Notice what's happened in the last few years with first year freshman student, college students, whereas before they were more middle of the road. Notice how in the past few years first year students are becoming more liberal or more conservative. They're not looking to be middle of the road. Religious self-identification. Protestants, by and large, are more conservative. Catholics are more middle of the road, moderate. Jews historically have been more liberal because of what their religions teach.